When people think of the PS1, good graphics don't typically come to mind. To some who are older, straight up ugly might be the way to go, and to those who are younger, terms like aesthetic might be thrown around, but generally it is accepted that old 3D is not new 3D. Still, there are some games that have set certain bars or introduced styles found even today, mainly in regards to cutscenes, atmosphere, and general cinematic qualities. Metal Gear Solid, the Final Fantasies, Parasite Eve, and Resident Evil, Silent Hill are all typically games thought about in these terms. Metal Gear, especially, with its big cutscenes and decent to good voice work, stands out from the crowd. Or, it did over here in the West at least, because really, rather than being a standout accomplishment, MGS1 seems more like a simple symptom of what Japan was already doing at large anyway. Aconcagua, Hybrid Heaven, Mega Man Ledge, Destrega, Legend of the Dragoon are all games of the big wannabe Hollywood varieties. It's just that most of which sold kinda poorly in comparison and are thus rarely made part of the discussion. Though, at least one game most certainly fucking should be. A game not often remembered. A game which name is featured in the title of this video. A game making this build-up all but pointless. I am a bad writer. So, while it might not be fully voiced, SquareSoft's 2000 release Vagrant Story is one cutscene-heavy beast that puts a lot of other cutscene-heavy beasts to shame. I mean, it has beautiful lighting, animated faces, set pieces, textures, and models made exclusively for a single frame, and a presence that isn't so much cinematic as it is theatrical or even like a Renaissance painting brought to life. The directing in this thing, for one, is bloody insane. Those one-off set pieces and models made for a single frame claim, for instance, came from shit like these birds whizzing by in dramatic fashion, or these lens flares in handmade bloom. There's certainly a case to be made here for how the PS1's grainy and jittery graphics add to the game as a whole too. I mean, I made a similar case for both Silent Hill 1 and the Crash B games, in which I proposed the idea that certain small details will stand out more in a generally more lower detailed environment. These butterflies and drippy drips in Crash, for example, are a lot more noticeable when there aren't like a billion other lighting and particle effects and filters being used all at once. Secondly, when shit's kinda lower grade, seams might start to open, thus showing off the craftspersonship behind it, which, at least to me as an artist, is really fucking interesting. Like, the fact that you can tell that these flames and weed particles are just GIF overlays makes them more tangible in a sense. You know how they did it, and thus it's easier to appreciate. Less abstract, I guess. More layman's friendly. And if you ask me, paintings are exactly the same. The fact that you can just stand there and physically feel and see the brushstrokes, the bits of canvas that have started to crumble over time, the bit where shit fade because it was out in the sun for too long, and so on. The work begins to tell its own story through how easily observable the work that was put into the work has become. And when I see establishing shots in a game like Vagrant Story, I see the same. I can tell how the lighting on the window panes is just caked into the textures. I can see how compressed as fuck this drawing is and how they just stuck a bunch of smoky fire gifs onto it, and most importantly, I can see the PS1 struggling to even bring this shit to life, as the whole thing jitters and janks about the place. In a way, one might also appreciate a piece of old machinery still doing its thing. It's tangible. You can see the cogs moving through the cracks within the seams, and in that, I'd say that this game emulates its paintingness much better than a prettier game ever could. Plus, it's also so far ahead of its fucking time as well, as, you see, these character models do things that PS1 games do not do. I don't know what to call it technically, but rather than being wrapped in bitmaps, I guess, it's almost as if these models are coated in a type of GIF-like technology. You can tell from how blurry the animation on these lip flaps be. Anyway, what this allows for is cinematic dynamism. Shit like wounds showing up in frame, people changing their facial expressions on the fly, and therefore also real-ass close-ups, which it all uses to make for some really engrossing cutscenes. The main villain, for instance, Sydney, isn't just a weirdly manipulative bastard through his words alone, but also because you can see him do his condescending slow claps, brush off wounds like they ain't but a bruised ego, and waggle his no-no finger with smug expressions abound. Despair and determination color in out damaged main man Ashley's face, and fear, confusion, and a mild infatuation for Sydney are also clearly visible in the kidnapped Melrose's facial expressions and background-heavy posture. Not to mention how visibly tense and defensive these two get whenever Sydney flaunts the fact that they can't get to him. It's really good. And yeah, I know, I'm skipping over the bit where I explain the story for context, but I kind of need to highlight these things here as to highlight that it is indeed all here. Sure, it might not always look as good when up close, but stuff like how they use lighting to allow the bats to eerily walk off into the abyss or frame people in conversation in ways typically done through depths of field, like I did it with the Melrose of previous mention, sure as shit adds to its De Nachtwacht level contrasts and overall paintingness. It's easy to look at the Renaissance and only hear harpsichords and shit playing in the back of your head while thinking of decadence, but shit sucked. Illnesses were everywhere, no one had teeth, and everyone smelled like shit and shat on the streets. Anti-Semitism was also fucking massive, and basically, unless you were some type of fat regent asshole, you were probably knee-deep in crabs, pox, blisters, plagues, and general all-round cancerous living conditions.
Great!
And where most works of fiction seem to ignore that to varying degrees, the world of Evilise seems to almost embrace it more than anything. Well, everyone still looks super pretty, and there also ain't a single person who wouldn't want to fuck Ramza regardless of what sexual persuasion you might subscribe to, but Vagrant Story at the very least does highlight the post-medieval fuckness to an impressive degree. Not by really showing you much of anything, but more so in instilling its harmful, hostile, and decrepit idea of it all. This is not a horror game, but man is it grim. The weird face-butt demons, the questionable medical practices, the tiger-crocodile orgies, and whatever the fuck this is, I could see all of it taking place here. In this cold, dark, lonely dungeon where you have nothing to accompany you other than the screams of the dead and the sinisterly crushing difficulty of the gameplay. 'Cause yeah, much like Soulsfield, Diablo's Gate, and Darkest Dingus, Vagrant Story 2 is a brutally unforgiving, complex, and vague as fuck dungeon crawler. Seriously, this game has more systems and menus than your fucking mom, and it also doesn't explain any of them. And better yet, shit also controls about as well as your fucking mom does too. Sorry about all the mom jokes, by the way. I don't know why I wrote those. Using a semi-isometric perspective and a camera that'll never be quite where you want it to be, thus insta-ruining any and all platforming what it might force you to do. And then it also goes full Japan on a boy by making circle the OK button, but then also having it initiate battle mode, thus still requiring X to be used for opening chest doors in the talks while on map, and the dialogue can also be advanced with either, leading to many an accidental menu open or close, which is great given that there's layers upon layers upon layers of menus, involving anything from weapon customization, reparation, dismantleization, craftalization, and buffalization, to all of the various weapon varieties, classes, and types, none of which ever being explained or taught through play in any manner or intuitive way. For real, the only way that this game teaches you at all is by pitting you up against a boss who can kill you in one hit, and you can't damage at all. Not to mention how it drops in regular enemies who are seemingly about 10 times tougher than said boss you just fought minutes ago, making you think, I've died like a billion times to this one guy, surely I must be doing something wrong. For which there is an in-game manual, which honestly isn't all too bad, but then also just fuck reading. Plus, the menus in question are legit kinda shitty, if I'm honest. I get that this is a product of making the most complicated game I've ever played, but even if you think you know what the problem might be, like, oh, maybe these enemies are best fought with piercing weapons, or, oh, maybe I should use this gem that boosts damage dealt to humans against these seemingly unkillable knights, then good luck fucking actually getting there, bitch. Because, I mean, which stat mean good? I don't see any green plus signs or arrows pointing up. There's just bars and minuses and other abstract garbo that you won't quite know what to do with for a good few hours. Leaving you to do like 70 damage to these dudes in this one room, but literally fuck all damage to the boys next door. I beat the game, and I still don't really know how or why that is, other than that it is supposed to be that way. Because I'm not shitting on the game at all, don't get me wrong. I'm listing these things off as positives to highlight how mean and appropriately true to its paintingness Vagrant Story truly is. As everything about these dungeons feels unwelcoming. Literally, the first one starts off like this. Which is a great buildup of atmosphere on its own, but let's just say that shills seem a fuck of a whole lot more intimidating when you realize that you can't even fight a fucking bat properly. Really getting you to fear the abject fuck what'll no doubt lie ahead. Hell, it even has a mechanic called Risk, which sole purpose is to screw you over. Thing is that Ashley is a troubled boy, so he will get anxious, tired, and scared of all the killing he's doing, and thus, the more enemies you fight, the higher your risk will be. Decreasing his accuracy, defense, and abilities to function good. It's lovely. Essentially, the game punishes you simply for playing it, and if that isn't some darkest dangus ass shit, then I don't know what is. And of course, there's also traps everywhere, and it also has a really complicated chain system that I don't want to get into, but is really, really tricky, and yet the game will still expect you to be good at it. Shit's fucked, pretty much. Very fucked. And you can say that regarding just about everything else in Vagrant Story too. Like, this fucking dialogue, man. I don't know what is going on, who any of these people are, or how to pronounce most of these fucking words, but when I see some sick old scumfuck regent motherfucker on his deathbed lit only by the ominous thunder and aspirations of corruption and see him say, "Am I fated to rot and wither, even as I breathe?" then I can't help but get into it. These devs clearly understood how grimly fiendish these ancient times of woe truly were, and latched onto that idea with a flash and bang of the dramatized wafflings as shown by actual historians of the time. It's pure. No one here is nice. They're all mean and sexually confronting, as this falls perfectly in line with Square's men with feminine hips and crotchless pants era, which I do not mind at all. But when you pair that with the coughing up of the bloods, bruises, and general illnesses, then that bare booty nudity tends to highlight the human fragility and overall meaty grossness perfectly. Which isn't at all unlike certain paintings of a certain time. I'm not crazy. Please believe me. Plus, you know, all characters are also super fucked up and hard to relate to, as Ashley himself has a traumatic past that isn't what he thought it was, making him rather stoic at best and awkward at worst. Sydney, our main villain, I guess, is one of those charming sociopathic cult leaders who looks like he's permanently in a state of fuck and also always one step ahead of everyone else. And all of the jobber knights have peasant accents and are dumb and disposable, and even the priests are violent and scummy, only wanting people to join their faith lest they be left to suffer the hand of pimp slaps. It's a very dark universe. Even this awesome looking big booby lady ends up being a thing with douche lord over here and also out for immortality or some vain shit like that. And yeah, it's not a story heavy game per se, nor is the plot at all graspable for most, I'd say, but it is because of the drip feeding over hours of unrelenting dunge that said unwelcoming and mean-spirited attitudes become especially crushing, really making this world feel unsalvageably dire. Though, it does look kinda nice. All dungeons have cobwebs, bones, dust, and corpses all about the place, contrasted only by the wee beams of sun peering through the barred-off ceiling windows, as sand crumbles down into your eyes for even so much as daring to look up. And where the town up above might look kinda nice at first, you will soon find that all of its inhabitants are dead, as the buildings are slowly reclaimed by nature itself. Storefront signs creaking only in the faint breeze as a reminder of the wares once sold here. It's graphically quite primitive, but as I said, it works in its painting-esque advantage, and besides, the X and interiors respectively have just enough details to show off what's what, while also leaving room for you to fill in the blanks, making it pretty gosh darn immersive for what it is, and I don't say that lightly either, considering how crushingly hard the game is and how even after having beat it, I still don't really know what the fuck I did. It says a lot that the synergy of atmosphere and gameplay got me to finish it either way. Hell, even just the way that the camera makes these caves feel so small and claustrophobic whilst also keeping a distance between you and the stoic Ashley is really cool. You properly get to observe him, I guess, as he moves into the shadows, venturing forth, not for honor, but for horror.
Oh no! Spooky skeletons! Ah!